It is draft day, baby. Marlins have 3 picks on day 1 in this draft. We're going to dig into all of the names to watch and the strategy. Plus, how deep is this class and in what positions? Boy, oh boy, it's a Sunday extravaganza on Locked On Marlins. This is Locked On Marlins, guys.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This, of course, is your daily Marlins podcast, even on a Sunday. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up on Twitter at @MiamiMarlins_UK. If you listen to the pod, hit subscribe, leave a review. This, of course, is your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. This one is coming at you early doors on Sunday because it is draft day, guys. And we had to drop an episode, even though I'm not contractually obliged to do one on Sunday. I'll still be there for you guys because it is draft day. And everyone is asking the question, what are the Marlins going to do on day 1? There is a YouTube channel as well, guys. Head on over there. Hit subscribe also. Leave a comment as well. Love the comments on YouTube. If you are watching, you will see I have a guest. I am not going to attempt to tackle the draft solo. No. I need a man that knows everything about the draft here that's going on. And man, I trust deeply. And I know Marlins Twitter trusts as well. Isaac Shapiro is in the house. Isaac, how we doing, brother?
Hey, Pete. I'm doing well. 8 a.m. out in Vegas, but never too early to talk Marlins or draft. So ready to kick it.
What commitment? 8 a.m. in Vegas. No one else is awake in Vegas apart from Isaac Shapiro hitting it up with Locked On Marlins, brother. I appreciate you taking the time. We're recording this Sunday afternoon, my time, early doors for you. The draft, 7 p.m. Eastern. Is it Eastern? I think it is Eastern. 7 p.m. This evening. So we felt we had to hit one and just kind of look into this draft more generally. Like what's the class looking like? What's the Marlins strategy likely to be? Also want to talk about DJ Svilik as well and how much pressure or not he could be under. And then we're going to dig into some names to watch for each of the 3 picks the Marlins are going to be making on day 1. Looking forward to that. Before we get into it, this episode is sponsored by our good friends over at Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's get into it. Isaac, just if you can, just try to summarize for me the draft class as a whole. As you're kind of sitting here thinking about the 2023 class, particularly at the top end of that as we get into day 1, where's the talent sitting in terms of college, high school, position, pitcher, et cetera, Where does that kind of talent primarily sit? Let's kind of start there and, maybe thinking about, how it maybe pertains to the Marlins picks as well, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So it's heavy on college hitting and high school hitting, namely like high school infield. Basically at the top, you've got heavy college and then 2 kind of the elite high school outfielders. So they're expected to kind of go in the top 5. That's Max Clark and Walker Jenkins.
Right.
So college hitting kind of early on in that top 10, and then it really starts to pick up on the high school prep bats later on in the first round and even through the second and up to the third round.
Okay. What about from a pitching perspective? Is there much top-level talent pitching-wise this time around?
So from a pitching perspective, there's kind of your 3 big horsemen from the college ranks. Paul Skeens, top pitcher, kind of an all-time season. Then you've got Rhett Lauder, who just is a very strong, durable pitcher who they should both be top 5-6 picks.
Right.
And then you have Chase Dollander, who is kind of the preseason top pick, unanimous kind of top guy who really struggled. And so he kind of has slid a little bit, but he probably shouldn't slide past like the 9th pick in Colorado.
Okay.
After that, there's a prep pitcher, Noble Meyer. He's kind of the top high school arm. He's definitely a name that has been circling around the Marlins pick at 10. He could go a little earlier. He could slide later, kind of a wild card there. And then once Meyer goes, there isn't really much on the pitching side until maybe in the later first round or even second round, where you've got a few high school pitchers, but it really drops off after Meyer. There's some college guys, some high school guys, but that's really more kind of later in the second round.
Makes sense. Kind of syncs with when Kim was on the broadcast earlier this week. She was talking about the draft and the strategy maybe and the excitement levels around the draft too. She mentioned as well, like I think her assessment was this is a good hitting draft. And
Yep.
hearing Craig Mish talking about this, on the Spaces a few weeks back too, Craig alluding to the fact that he senses the Marlins are going to be looking with particularly their first round pick for a hitter as well. So the Marlins are picking at 10 overall. The likelihood is, from what we're hearing, from what Kim's kind of sharing, unless they're kind of just toying with us and thinking we'll zig when everyone zags, but the likelihood here is that the Marlins are going to be taking a hitter with that first round pick anyway, at number 10. But overall, from your perspective, what do you think with that knowledge out there? What do you think the Marlins strategy kind of could and should be for this year's draft?
Yeah. So with all these prep high school infielders, I think the Marlins absolutely need to jump in on that early on, whether that's at 10, 35, or even their 47th pick. I think they definitely need to get their hands in there. But with it being such a strong college crop too at the top, I think they should go with the idea of getting a college guy and at least one high school guy. So if you go college, then maybe you go high school, or if you go high school at the top, then maybe you get a good college guy later on at 35. But they should kind of mix it up a little bit, but definitely get at least one of the high school kids.
Yeah. One of the other kind of narratives that I've heard as well is that the Marlins maybe will be targeting to look to go under slot in particular with that first pick at 10, to look to try to spread around their pool money into the kind of latter rounds. I feel like they've had decent success of doing that historically as well. So it could well be that, to your point, maybe they look to go infield prep, but a guy that maybe was projected to go a touch later, get him to sign under slot there, and then they can kind of use a bit more of their dough to spread that around. So that's been a narrative that we've kind of heard banded around. Would you be comfortable with that approach?
Yeah, I would. I think it might depend on who they are targeting at 10 in that kind of scenario. I think a lot of the draft writers are kind of bringing that up as a potential underslot option.
Yeah.
When it comes to like a high school hitter, while there are rankings and this one is better than that one right now, I think it's a little hard to really be so sure that this one's going to turn out to be better than a different one. So, if one of them's asking for like 7-8 million and another one you can get for like 4 or 5 million,
Yeah.
and then you can use that money later on. I mean, why not? If the opportunity presents itself, why not do that?
Will the club have a feel about the signing bonus requirements before they make the pick? I guess like with kind of Khalil Watson, like think it back to Khalil Watson, for example, where a guy that kind of slid was in many ways kind of best player available. I would describe it as at that point in terms of like the tools. But clearly the Marlins, I think they had to go over slot for Khalil Watson. And the question around that pick was, can you sign him? They took him, but they weren't sure if they'd sign him. Would the club have a kind of general ballpark view of like what it's going to take to sign him before they make that pick, or shouldn't they do? I actually don't know the mechanics of that. I don't know if you do.
Yeah, so when teams are, I think when they're kind of planning out and they're working, with all the prospects, they are, I think, getting an idea of what their number is, and that'll kind of help drive their strategy. So for example, even not necessarily high school, but right now the top pick of the draft, Dylan Cruz, he's like the unanimous top prospect, but Pittsburgh knows he's asking a very high price, like way kind of over slot. And I think that's actually pushing them towards the direction of Wyatt Langford. So teams are kind of using that to gauge if they want to draft a guy, or if they want to avoid that guy. I heard a rumor from a draft a while ago that the Marlins could have drafted Nolan Gorman, but they supposedly didn't know his number. And they didn't know if they'd be able to sign him, so they didn't take him. They took Connor Scott that year. So if that's true, that would be an example where like doing that due diligence and knowing the number could benefit you, just in your prep.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess just thinking about what you've kind of alluded to here with the top end of this draft, there's going to be a lot of middle infield guys. There's going to be a lot of straight out of high school, effectively. The last time the Marlins went down that path was Khalil Watson. It's fair to say it's been a bit of a rodeo thus far with Khalil. Like, the tools were there. If the Marlins would have not taken him, whoever was picking after the Marlins probably would have taken him anyway, because he just was probably the best player available. But they found some challenges there with Khalil Watson, the kind of off the field stuff and some growing pains. But I must say, into year 2, things are starting to look back up, I'd say, for Khalil Watson. And he's starting to show out, and equally mentally starting to mature a touch. And that's always the risk with these guys, giving multiple millions of dollars to 18-year-old dudes. Like, that can affect people in very, very, very different ways. So, that is the risk, I guess, of taking that kind of guy at 10, right?
Yeah. Back in 2021, I actually don't really know too much about Khalil because I just didn't expect that he was going to fall all the way to the Marlins. But Absolutely, that's kind of the risk you run into when you hear about this elite high school hitter, but there's concerns about maybe his ability to hit fastballs or high up or off speed or something. Those are things that you can't guarantee you're going to get corrected. So it's great in theory, but if you can't develop them into a true MLB talent, then it might all go to waste. In this draft, there are a number of hitters who are set to have like a plus hit tool, who are set to be above average hitters who maybe just need to come into a little bit of power, or they need to just grow a little bit more. So I would think they would have learned from the Khalil pick to maybe go for the higher, better hitting prospect over the kind of tantalizing power.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's hit the ad. Then we want to talk about DJ Svilik in particular walking into this draft. And then we're going to talk about the 3 picks specifically into day 1 and some names that we think we could be potentially considering or looking at that 10. Well, we'll start at 10 and then get into the comp round and equally into round 2 as well. But this episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Gametime. They have the graphics as well. They're kind of teal as well. So they were made for this show, which is great to see. Guys, but buying tickets to your favorite events, it shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They have killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets, football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more, if there is more. Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Pretty simple, guys. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, here we are on Locked On Marlins. On draft day, Isaac Shapiro is in the house, and it's right heading into this draft, I think, to talk about DJ Svilik and whether he is on the proverbial hot seat at this point. Like, it's fair to say there's some mixed reviews, I would say, over Jacob Berry. So that's going to take a bit of time to work out, a bit like Braxton Garrett in some ways. Like, Braxy was a bit of a late developer, then all of a sudden flashing it. So I think we can't be too quick to make decisions on a guy that's, less than a year pretty much into his professional career thus far. But overall, it feels like DJ Svilik, this is a big draft for him, particularly with the Marlins. The farm system is a touch depleted. A few guys have either been hurt or gone backwards a touch. And so it feels like this needs to be a big draft just to really kind of boost the system. So how you feel about DJ and where do you kind of feel in terms of the hot seat-ometer? 10 being he is absolutely scorching hot on his bum for the hot seat at this point, and 1 being no chance he's still the guy.
Yeah, I'll put it at a 7, kind of vanilla, but I'm not going to give him too much flack on the first round picks. I think with a first round pick, a lot more goes into it than just DJ. It's probably front office ownership. I think everybody's got to play in the top pick. Where DJ tends to cook is probably that like second, third round and on. I feel like they've kind of struggled even in that second, third, even fourth rounds, but he's done solid kind of later on. We care about the top 5 rounds or so, but it is a 20-round draft, and it used to be a 40-round draft. So he does a good job of finding major league relievers or role player like role players who could become things kind of later on in the draft. And the way that they've been drafting kind of lately, it's required him to really go with kind of these older college pitchers from rounds like 6 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
So like Pat Monteverde, he I think was their 7th round pick in the last couple of years, and so kind of getting those older, more seasoned pitchers is kind of where he's been doing in those like 6 to 10 rounds, and so he look, anybody could look at his track record and say, yeah, he's going to be on the hot seat. I mean, they haven't really produced much major league talent since he's been there, and so the pressure is definitely on, and I think he knows that, and I think you're going to see him kind of just working like he knows his back's against the wall.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone's got their own MO, and like you said, like DJ's eye is a little bit more kind of, 5 to 10 rounds in and looking to pick up arms, and the Marlins, that's kind of their MO too, where they just go on these streaks of just taking arm after arm after arm after arm, because as an organization, they can identify talent in that area and they can develop it too. And so that's the thing. And that kind of leads me into it. Like, I know most people are thinking they're going to take a hitter, a 10. We'll see what profile that is, whether it's one of the college guys, whether it's a high school guy. But for me, I feel more confident the Marlins taking a pitcher, to be honest with you, in round 1. And so I am intrigued if they get to that spot and one of the top arms is still available at 10. I do wonder if they divert away from that and think, you know what, let's de-risk it a touch. We we know what we can do organizationally, and they maybe go away from a hitter at that point. I'm intrigued to see how that would play out. I mean, it may be overthinking it a touch, but the track record tells me that their hit rate is higher on upper rounds arms thus far, from what I've seen with DJ Svilik anyway. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Let's get into it though, mate. I mean, think about the pick 10 overall. What do we think of the kind of true or most likely names to watch? Equally, if it was your pick based on the cluster that we talk about, which direction would you go as well?
Yeah, so pick 10, I've got my names. It's a little tough because there's so much that can happen leading up to it, but some names that I'd look out for in the college ranks. You're looking at guys named Matt Shaw. He's kind of my top preference. He was a Maryland shortstop, but probably going to transition to second base in the pros. Really, really strong hitter. He hits for some power. Looking at a guy who, in a perfect world, could develop into like a Matt McLain type guy, where you're just a good hitter. Mm-hmm. He's hit literally everywhere he's gone ever since he started at college to the summer Cape Cod League. He's just been like a 350, 450 on base and 700 slug guy, where it's just, he's a professional hitter. So Matt Shaw. Other college guys, you've got Jacob Gonzalez and Jacob Wilson. These are kind of two guys who some people might think of as more vanilla picks, boring picks, not high ceiling really. They've got high floors. Jacob Gonzalez is a shortstop, very highly touted coming into the year, had a little bit of a down year by his standards. I mean, he still hit 320 and had a solid season, but it's the kind of guy who, he'll play shortstop, maybe third base. He'll hit for league average, 700s OPS. He probably won't be an all-star, but he's probably one of the safer picks of the draft. Jacob Wilson, he is of the Luis Arias type. So you can tell there's probably a bit of, it's a bit mixed reviews with that, where he struck out, I think, 5 times this entire season, but he also just doesn't really impact the ball that hard. I think his average exit velocity is like 83 miles an hour. That'd be, I think, the lowest in all of baseball right now. But at the same time, he's 6'4", so he's like he could grow into his frame still, which you don't really expect out of college guys. You feel like they're pretty much fully there physically. He's the kind of guy that at 6'4", pretty lanky, he could kind of grow into his body a little bit more, maybe tap into a little bit of power. And he's a shortstop as well.
Okay. I mean, a 6'4" Luis Arias.
Right. I mean, you could dream on that.
That feels like the perfect pick. I mean, why is anyone down? I mean, it's funny, right? As Marlins fans, we've kind of been in that situation this year where you get Arias in and you know what he's kind of billed as, and because he doesn't hit any home runs, it doesn't, it's not overly sexy. But then you see it up front, up close and personal, like, actually, wow, this is incredible. No strikeout, great bat to ball skills. And again, to your point, like 6'4", like Arias isn't 6'4". So, there's plenty of growth there potentially. Is that Jacob Wilson, did you say? There's too many Jacobs going on here. We've got Jacob Berry, Jacob Gonzalez, Jacob Wilson.
Jacob Wilson, yeah. And I
Wow.
saw Takes tweeted last night at like 2 a.m. that he
He
kind of
was
talked
cooking late
himself
then.
into that, if that was the case. So if Takes can talk himself into it, then I think anybody should be able to. But yeah, and a couple Jacobs as potential college options early on.
Okay. Let's flip it over then to the Marlins are picking. They got a comp A pick, so they're picking 37th, I think.
35, yeah.
35, sorry. 35, which is also on day one. So thinking about let's say they go Jacob Wilson, they go Luis Arias 2.0 in with 10. At 35, what are the kind of names you're expecting to be around in that spot, and what are the ones that kind of excite you most, I guess?
Sure. So if Jacob Wilson goes 10, I think most people will probably shut the draft off to not even make it to 35. But if we're once we get to 35, you're probably going to start dipping into the high school infield ranks. So the top high school infielder, who I probably should have mentioned with 10, his name's Arjun Namala. He's from Florida. He's this big time power, toolsy infielder, and a lot of people would probably prefer him at the 10th pick.
Right.
But he's kind of a money issue guy where he might be asking for a little bit more money than you'd like to give a high school guy at pick 10. So if you wait to get to 35 to get the high school guy, you're looking at names like Colt Emerson. He's a supremely talented hitter, maybe one of the better hitters in the entire draft class. I think he's from Ohio, but good hitter, a little bit smaller, I think 5'11", 6 feet, probably like a second baseman in pro ball. Looking at like a above average hitter, can grow into some power. I think right now it's just kind of average power, average speed, and kind of average fielding. So it's kind of a average tools all around, but a really, really advanced hitter. The next name who I'm very high on, his name is George Lombard Jr. His father, George Lombard, I think he's a coach for the Detroit Tigers, maybe the bench coach or something.
Okay.
This kid is a supremely tooled out hitter. I mean, he's 6'3". He's a shortstop, massive power, massive speed. I mean, this guy, it seems like he's got everything that you want from a high school prospect. Ian Smith, he's a prospects writer out in Florida. He kind of compares him to like the Manny Machado mold. George Lombard Jr., very big frame. He's got a lot of room to grow. They think it'll be a like plus power, above average hitting, plus speed. He's kind of got everything that you want. He's slated to be in the 30-ish range, so he could go a little bit before Miami. This could be a scenario where if they do go with Jacob Wilson, they'll have that extra money to maybe tell him, hey, we'll give you your number if you tell teams that you're not interested in them drafting you. Because a high school guy can always tell a team, like, I'm going to go to college if you're going to draft me. If they want another team to take them, they can kind of go that route. So he's my number one target, George Lombard Jr.
Love it.
And then there's other names. There's Adrian Santana. He's this Nasim Nunez type with a little bit more pop. Really fast runner, really good defender, solid hitter, and he's got a little bit of power. And so you're looking at like a Nasim Nunez type with, who can get more than maybe 10 home runs, 15 home runs at his peak. That's a really appealing option. A name that the team's been linked to actually has been a guy named Ty Peete. Peete is how you spell his last name. He's another big-bodied, like 6'3" infielder from Georgia. Someone mentioned that he's kind of got the Khalil Watson mold of kind of he's very not full of himself, but he's very confident in himself. And so some people are maybe they're not. It's not their top choice, but he's another tooled out infielder. He can hit for power, he can run, he can field. So that's another option to look out for. Ty Peete.
Sounds like there's some seriously big-bodied dudes around here. Like the Marlins are going to have
definite big-bodied dudes.
If they take all these guys we've just talked about here, they're going to have, 6'4" up the middle. Second base at short. Who knows where Arias is at that point? I mean, in a few years' time, but I mean, that seems to be the MO here. Just take like the 6'4" dude, one of them a contact, one of them a power guy. You could dream on those attributes, right? Like it's one of those where sometimes the body can kind of sway you a bit, maybe in the kind of, you look at it through a kind of glass half full approach anyway. If they've got those physical attributes, think, right, what can you do with the baseball talent to go with that? So we'll see. Final one of the day. So there's going to be 3. So then they're into round 2 and they're picking at 47. So they've got 10, bit of a gap, then 35, and then 47 on round in day 1. Sorry. Do we think they continue down the path there of going hitter as well in round 2?
So 47, that's kind of a fun spot where if they do go hitter in the top 2 picks, they could start to kind of dip their feet in where their strength is in pitching. There's a lot of strong high school pitchers kind of starting in the 40-ish
Right.
range. So you're looking at guys like the top left-handed pitcher, second ranked left-handed pitcher, Cam Johnson, big body, can throw up to like 99, and he's got, I think, a vicious breaking ball and something to dream on, right? 99 mile an hour fastball, good breaking ball. I think command is kind of his issue, but if any pitcher in the Marlins system, I don't care. They're gonna give you a changeup, they're gonna fix their command issues, and you're gonna be a top 100 prospect in no time.
Nailed
on. Right. So you got Cam Johnson, and then there's a couple others. Blake Walters, Josh Knopf. Walters is another bigger guy, a guy who people think he hasn't really grown into his stuff yet. He can definitely develop more. So that's definitely a guy to keep an eye on, especially for Miami, where if they see untapped potential, they'll go and tap that. They'll go and get that potential. And then this guy, Josh Knopf, I think he's smaller, like 6 feet tall, but he's very polished already. And so he's another option to look out for at 47. So Cam Johnson, Blake Walters, Josh Knopf are probably the 3 high school pitchers that I'm looking at 47. But there's probably 3 or 4 more that you could name if you even just looked at like the top rankings of prospect. It's really deep once you get to the late 40s.
Yeah. All right, that has been awesome. There's one guy I did want to ask you about briefly though, because it's a name that I've heard, and I'd heard kind of some time ago, kind of linked to the Marlins in some ways, or suggested, and it's Enrique Bradfield. And it's fair to say that as we approach the draft, a lot of people have cooled, it's fair to say, on him, and maybe hasn't had the year. So maybe just kind of talk to kind of what's happened, or well, who is he as a prospect, and why have people cooled on him? And could he be even a buy low candidate, let's say at 35, if he gets all the way down there? Because the way people were talking about it was this was maybe a pick the Marlins would be making at 10. So something's happened with Bradfield along the way. Interested to hear your view on him.
Sure. Enrique Bradfield, he's a center fielder from Vanderbilt. He's known to be the best defensive player in college baseball. I mean, if you go on Twitter and you look up his name, you're going to find like Sports Center top 10 plays on every video you see. I mean, he's a gifted defender, and he's got 80 grade speed. He's one of the faster guys in all of baseball. So, when you have 2 80 grade tools, basically, it's hard to pass up on that type of potential. And I think he was kind of rumored to the Marlins really early on in the draft cycle, kind of like you were saying. I think where his hype started to die down a little bit was, I think he only hit like 290 in college this year. If you're picking top 10, you really probably want a guy that's hitting at least 300. It's a really weird swing, weird approach. I think he knows that he's got to change that once he gets to pro ball. So I think just the offensive concerns have really slid him a little bit, but I don't think it's going to slide him enough to get to 35. I think I saw his range was really starting at maybe like 13, 14 through maybe the mid 20s. Just with a college guy, they don't have that leverage to say, I don't want to go to your team, I want to go there. So they can't say, they could go back to college, but then they're a senior, have no leverage, won't make much money. So with a college guy like that, it's whichever team wants to take him, they're going to take him. I don't think the Marlins will. He could slide in the center field tomorrow, probably play Gold Glove defense and steal bags as a pinch runner. But the hit is, how many center fielders have we seen? Good defense, can't hit, get him out. So I wouldn't think the Marlins would be too keen on him. I think it's a popular link because everyone knows the team might need a center fielder. I mean, we've got Dane Myers and Jazz, so I mean, I don't think we do. But
No.
that's just kind of a lazy, popular link.
Yeah, for sure. The Marlins definitely need to consider what they're going to be doing at shortstop in the very, very near term. I think obviously Joey Wendell expiring deal. Who knows how it plays out? But there's a few potential shortstops in the system, but if they feel like a touch away. But either way, it's the center field need has kind of disappeared a touch, like organizationally in some ways. Where if they wanted to leave Jazz out there for the next 4 seasons, then they could, and there'll be some above average defense from what we've seen at Jazz. So sounds interesting. I just wanted to pick your brains on him because it was a name that we heard. People had cooled on him, trying to understand why. It makes a ton of sense. Guys, we're going to wrap it up there. That is your draft day prep for day one covered. That is the draft class itself. What are we seeing? Tons of hitters, no doubt. Sounds like, and Kim's kind of affirmed that too. Kim is already calling out tons of hitters. We're expecting the Marlins to go hitting heavy, let's say. Pressure, I think, is on DJ Svihlik in this draft to try to retool this farm system. The Marlins pick 3 times on day one, and their first pick will be number 10 in round 1 later on this evening. So we're looking forward to that one. Isaac, thanks so much for joining me all the way from Vegas. This is a Vegas to Leeds hookup. No internet connection issues, which is absolutely stunning in itself. So I appreciate you, mate. Let everyone know where they can find you on Twitter as well, because you're one of the best Marlins Twitter followers. So let everyone know for the guys that don't have the graphics to help them.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. You can find me at Sevento17, Sevento 17. I'll be flying during the draft, but I'll have internet. I'll be tweeting leading up to the draft. So I'll be around.
You got it. Awesome. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed that episode. I know I certainly have, because I am by no means a draft expert, but I've got some names now to work with. I'm excited to see the way the Marlins go. And you've drawn me in with a Luis Arias 2.0 at 6'3", 6'4". I mean, let's see how that goes. Let's see what, I mean, like you said, if it's been given the takes were made kind of like loose stamp of approval, then I think that's good enough for me. So sounds good. Guys, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. The Marlins hopefully will head into the All-Star break with a series win after they take on the Phils today. Then we hit the draft. So, of course, I'll be back on Monday recapping the game. Like I said, hopefully they roll into it with a series win, but also recapping all of the action and the 3 picks the Marlins have made. Look forward to seeing you then.